How's it going, everyone? I am back with another video. This is going to be my Week 18 recap video where I go through all the games that took place this past weekend and just break them down pretty much. Just go over my thought process, how I interpret the games, write down my thoughts, things like that. Last week of the year, well, last regular season week of the year. Here we go. So we had two Saturday games. First one was Browns Ravens. I think the score is pretty self-explanatory of how this game went. I mean, the Ravens just completely dominated this game. It was pretty, well, not pretty close, but it was relatively close. The Browns were within I know three scores is a lot, but the Ravens were up 7-0. They got a pick six, and they were up 14-3 at the half, and they went up 21-3. And the Browns got a touchdown, and their defense was kind of holding the Ravens a little bit. It's like, okay, like the Browns seriously going to make this a game. Then from that point on, the Ravens scored 14 unanswered to really open it up. Derrick Henry got a big run late, and they won 35-10. So, yeah, I think this game kind of went as most people expected. Uh, my old guy, Bailey Zappi, I guess he played as we expected. Not great. Uh, looked decent through parts, but not great. Pretty much no run game for the Browns. Judy got involved. He had a decent game. Jordan Akins had a decent game too. Elijah Moore, a couple catches. Lamar played a good game. He only had a 50% completion percentage, though, and they still put up 35 points. That shows you how dangerous the Ravens are. Derrick Henry, I mentioned that big run late. He had a really good game. Lamar, per usual, got involved in the run game. Rashad Bateman had a good game. Zay Flowers got hurt. That's kind of the big story from the Ravens receivers here. He's not expected to play against the Steelers in the wild card, which could be a bit of an interesting game. I mean, most people are picking the Ravens. They should win the game, but I think it might be a bit closer than people think. But especially without Flowers, but he got hurt. Mark Andrews, a couple of catches. He had a really good back half of the year. After the first couple weeks, he really wasn't getting involved. He had a good back half of the year. Isaiah Likely, a couple catches. So, good balance for the Ravens there. We got the team stats here. Again, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The Ravens just outplayed them in everything. Certainly deserved to win the game. Penalties, though, they're going to want to clean that up. That's kind of been their Achilles heel all year is penalties. Good thing, though, the Ravens defense has been picking it up. It played really well in this game. Held the Browns to 3 the entire game till late. They got a touchdown. So, and if I remember right, the touchdown was kind of set up on a questionable penalty. I think the Ravens had stopped them. It was going to be fourth down. I think they got a questionable roughing the passer call, if I remember right. Maybe I'm thinking of a different game, but I think it was this game. But yeah, I'm gonna try not to go off topic, talk about the playoffs. I'm depending on how long this video goes, I might record my official playoff bracket after this. If not, I'll definitely do it early tomorrow morning, try to get it uploaded sometime around then. But I'm just going to try to talk about the Week 18 games, not talk about the playoffs. Another thing, I'm going to once the season ends, like after the Super Bowl, I'm going to do or at least I plan on doing a season recap video for every team. So I'm not going to talk about, each team season like super in depth in this game. But yeah. Obviously the Browns just had a disaster. The Ravens are heating up at the right time. Good win. Kind of expected this performance from them. So good win for the Ravens. I think we all kind of expected a performance like that in that game. Bengals Steelers. This was an interesting game. Unfortunately, the Bengals couldn't make the playoffs. They needed three things to happen. They needed to A, win. Obviously, that happened. B, have the Jets upset the Dolphins, which that happened, which I predicted. That game kind of went as I predicted. So I'm a little bit proud of myself in that regard there. And C, they needed the Broncos to lose. Well, that did not happen, and that did not even come close to happening. They won 38-0. Want to talk about the Chiefs scared of the Bengals. Travis Kelce on the podcast say with Jason Kelce podcast said, it was pretty much BS, but not a good look for the Chiefs. But this game specifically, Bengals went right down the field and scored, and then they got a field goal on their next drive, and they just looked lifeless. The Steelers defense did. Troy Aikman talked about it in the broadcast. They did not have great body language. Steelers offense struggled for most of this game. George Pickens had an awful game, probably the worst game of his career. Dropped multiple passes. I don't think he had a catch in this game, and he came so close to 1,000 yards. Just needed, I think it I forget how far off he was, but I don't think he needed a lot of yardage in this game coming into it, and he obviously didn't get it. He didn't get any catches, so very disappointing year, or well, last game for Pickens, obviously. Even late in the game, when the Steelers were driving to get into field goal range, they had Pickens wide open on 3rd and 12, and it was just a little bit off. It was just, I don't know, that was a weird play. I was pulling for the Bengals. So my heart dropped when I saw him wide open. Thank God that didn't happen, even though it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because the Broncos ended up slaughtering the Chiefs. But after the Bengals were up 10-0, the Steelers defense settled in. Bengals offense kind of settled down a little bit. They just kicked a bunch of field goals after that. They only got 3 field goals. Steelers offense in the fourth quarter picked it up a bit. They made it it was a 5-point game. Bengals had to punt. And then the Bengals defense got a nice stop, but they muffed the punt. The Steelers got the recovery. I'm like, all right, yep, the Steelers probably going to win this game. I wrote no pun here intended, but steal the game because they did not deserve to win it. The Bengals definitely outplayed them. They would have completely stole the game had they won it. And they settled for a field goal. I'm like, all right, please, Joe Burrow. I do not trust this defense, even though it's playing a solid game and it's played a bit better the past couple of games, and they're on their little win streak here. 5-game win streak to end the year. Mike, please just get a couple first downs. They lost T. Higgins about at, I want to say, after either like right at the end of the second quarter when they were taking some shots into the end zone, or in the second half they lost him. And after he went out, their offense definitely kind of struggled outside of the opening drive to start the second half there, where again they were held to nothing but field goals, 3 field goals. But anyway, the Bengals weren't able to shoot the clock out. Joe Burrow got sacked in the 3rd and short, and I'm like, all right, yep, that's game right there. They punted it. I'm like, I have very little faith in this defense. Defense stepped up, so credit to them for that. Trey Henderson got a massive sack on Russell Wilson. Pause. But Russ also had a terrible play where he rushed for like 4 yards, and they only had one timeout. The Steelers did, and he only got 4 yards out of it. Wasted a bunch of time on the clock. That was bad. Then there was the Pickens wide open that got missed by the Steelers, and then Freiermuth had a pass that could have set them up. I want to say with the yardage he would have got after, they would have been close to field goal range. Boswell, I want to say, if I remember the play right, and it was incomplete. I think it bounced right off his hands. So Steelers definitely some missed opportunities, but I think the Bengals definitely outplayed them, deserved to win the game. Joe Burrow had a good game, per usual. The interception came deep into Steelers territory. Kind of the feeling the game was going to get close late because this Steelers defense settled in after that first quarter, played a pretty solid game. Khalil Herbert, obviously, he was the main running back with Chase Brown out. Not too much from him, but not horrible, I guess. Jamar, good game per usual. Mike Gesicki, very underrated year. He played good. Higgins, I mentioned he got hurt, but a pretty good game from him. Russ, not a great game. I guess not awful stats. Not really a great game. Very little in the run game from the Steelers. Freiermuth had a good game, and outside of that, very little from the receivers. You look at the team stats here. Again, the Steelers nearly won this game, and look at these stats. The Bengals definitely outplayed them and deserved to win the game. They outplayed them in nearly every category here. They also won the time possession battle by a pretty good margin, too. So this definitely would have been a stolen game from the Bengals had the Steelers won. It was pretty ironic. I think Troy Aikman mentioned in the broadcast at the end that Bengals want to win the game. It's going to have to come down to their defense, which has, been the weak part by far this year for the Bengals. So credit to the defense for stepping up and winning. Unfortunately, it's too little, too late. They didn't make the playoffs. Otherwise, they would be a very interesting team. Definitely more interesting than Denver as a 7 seed. So yeah, but good win for the Bengals, grinded out win, 5-game win streak at the end of the year, just too little, too late. Unfortunately, Steelers going into the postseason ice cold. Uh, Panthers Falcons. So this was a very high scoring game. Did not expect this. I thought the Falcons defense was going to play a good game. That did not happen. They played horrible. I mean, they allowed 44 points to the Panthers and Bryce Young. Bryce Young played phenomenal this game. Very good game from Bryce Young. I mean, their offense looked unstoppable. The Panthers did. And the good news for the Falcons is Michael Penix played a really good game. He was clutch. He scored at the end when he needed to. Like he also did that against the Commanders. So Michael Penix showing this clutch gene. So there's some good news for the Falcons. Um, yeah, Bryce Young I mentioned played a good game. Jalen Coker they're in a trick play. He got a 19-yard completion out of it. Not too much going in the run department. Actually, yeah, that's a pretty good balance with Sanders and Blackshear. Pretty good balance from those guys there. Jalen Coker, he's been very underrated. He's going to rise up fantasy draft boards next year. Uh, Thielen, pretty solid, consistent game per usual. Pretty good balance between the receiving core in general. Penix, I mentioned, played a really good game, 300 plus yards. The pick, I want to say it was like I want to say it wasn't a Tywin Penix. Something kind of unfortunate happened. Maybe I'm thinking of something different, but something kind of unfortunate happened. So not 100% on Penix if I remember right. Bijan had a really good game. Panthers dead last in run defense, so Bijan had a good game, took advantage of that. Even Algier had a pretty solid game. Drake London went off in this game. They had a sequence at the end of the first half where Penix lobbed it up. Drake London caught it. It was like a 50-50 ball. They called it incomplete. Next play, same exact thing. Drake London caught it for a touchdown. One of his 2 touchdowns in the game. Ray McLeod, couple catches too. Getting to team stats here. You know, you're probably looking at these stats. It's like, how the hell did the Falcons lose? Honestly, I don't really have a good answer. I think the only reason they lost is because the Panthers won the coin toss in overtime. If the Falcons won the coin toss in overtime, I think they would have won the game. It wouldn't have mattered because the Bucs had already beat the Saints to win the division, which early on I'll talk about the game when I get to it. But the Saints were leading the Bucs. The Bucs were not playing good, and the Falcons had a lead, so they really had a solid chance at winning the division had those scores held up. They would have, but obviously they didn't, and the Bucs ended up winning the division. Falcons just a really disappointing year, 8-9. Obviously, much higher expectations for them. Panthers good second half of the year. Obviously, played much better ball. A couple close competitive losses. Some good teams. But yeah, really good back half of the year for the Panthers. Definitely going to keep Bryce Young. It looks like he's played much better. He looks like a starting caliber quarterback now. Yeah, just looking at these stats definitely suggest the shootout that this game was. Um, Falcons outplayed them in most of these stats. I honestly just think it came down to the Panthers getting the ball in overtime. Falcons needed to come back late. Just when the Falcons had control of this game, the Panthers would strike right back, and they would not go away. They definitely played spoiler. So credit to the Panthers for getting this gutsy win, putting up 44 against the Falcons defense on the road in Atlanta. Did not expect that. Falcons, they knew they had to win this game. They wanted a chance at the playoffs, and they didn't win. Again, even though they've been playing a lot better, a Panthers team that you're better than. Even though the Falcons haven't been playing too great the back half of the year. So really disappointing from the Falcons. They missed the playoffs. At least Penix looks good. Panthers, good win. Probably feel good win to beat your division rival, getting them out of the playoffs, even though they wouldn't have made it anyway. So good grinding out win for the Panthers in that one. Uh, Texans Titans. Really don't think there's too much to say about this game. The Texans had their starters in there for a bit. They look good. They put up some points, and they put in the backups, and they still look good. Titans just not a great game. They scored in the second half to make it a bit more interesting, but not a great game. Texans got a scoop and score on defense. That was probably a good highlight of the game. Stroud obviously didn't play a lot, but he looked pretty good when he was in there. So that's what the Texans need head into the postseason. talk about going in cold. They needed a game like this. Davis Mills, he did decent, I guess, for what was asked of him. Dameon Pierce had a really good game. I don't know why they don't play him a bit more. I understand, obviously, if Joe Mixon's the guy, they got to play him as the running back one. They should give Pierce some more playing time. I mean, he was a tank in 2022, and then last year he's like barely utilized, it felt like. And then this game with the backups playing, he went off. He had I forget how long it was, but he had a super long run for a touchdown. Uh, not too much from a yardage stretch from the receiving corner. I guess a decent balance there for the Texans. Well, they did a weird thing this game. The Titans, their quarterbacks, they just kept rotating them. Will Levis, I actually thought played pretty solid in this game. Mason Rudolph did too, I guess. Pollard, not a great game. 62 yards, not even 3 yards a carry, but he's getting a heavy workload at least. Pretty decent balance from the receiving core here. Ridley, Westbrook Kine went off. Martin with a long reception there. With the team stats here, I think they're pretty telling. Texans outplayed them in most of them. I think the final score definitely aligns with a lot of these stats here. Yeah. Nearly dead even in time possession. Texans won it by a grand total of 2 seconds. That's interesting. But yeah, not going to talk about this game too much. Titans got the first overall pick with my team. That's a game I won't talk about a lot. My team playing the Bills. Titans got the first overall pick, losing this game. They just looked bad for most of it. Texans, I guess a decent win, trying to, get something going heading in the playoffs when they've not been good at all, coming off a horrible performance against the Ravens. So I guess good for the Texans get this win. Titans looked awful for most of it. They get the first overall pick, so maybe a win-win for both teams in that one. Giants Eagles, kind of the same thing here. I don't think I'll spend too much time with this game. Eagles jumped up to an early lead. Then the Giants scored late, made it a bit interesting. Philly held on, won the game. Philly played all their backups, locked into the 2 seed. Tanner McKee, he's looked pretty good in the action he's gotten. I mean, he played good in relief in last week's game against the Cowboys. Then he played a solid game in this one too. Not much in the run game for the Eagles. Pretty decent balance there. Johnson, Dallas Goedert had good games. Then a nice balance for the Eagles there from the receivers. Drew Lock, I don't think he played awful, but I guess what you'd probably expect from him, just up and down, sort of. Not getting a lot going, but not shit in the bed completely either. Taron Tracy's kind of been under the radar player this year. Definitely a piece the Giants want to build off of, or maybe not build off of, but build. Definitely want to have him as part of the builds that they're trying to get with the team here. He had a good game, 4.2 yards per carry. Not a good game, but it's a decent game, I guess. Malik Neighbors had a good game. He had a nice touchdown catch. That was a really nice catch. He had the rookie record for receptions until Brock Bowers broke it later in the day against the Chargers. Wanda Robinson, a lot of catches, not a lot of yardage though. We have these team stats here. I think it's pretty telling of how the game went. Eagles got out to a good start, and the Giants kind of made it a bit interesting. So I think these stats are pretty telling. Yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling. Pretty close in a lot of these categories. So definitely pretty telling of how the game went. A good win for the Eagles. Shows how deep they are as a team. Their backups beating obviously the Giants, even though they didn't get the first overall pick. I think the Giants are the worst team in football this year. So good for the Eagles with their backups to beat the Giants starters, even though the Giants are hurt, and still I think they're the worst team in the league. It's still good for the Eagles backups to beat the Giants starters. So Eagles showing how deep they are. Pause. How much depth they have. So good for Philly. I guess a solid win to head into the postseason with the backups, maybe experiment with some things. So good win for the Eagles. Giants, mercifully, their season comes to an end. At least Neighbors was a stud this year. Jags, Colts. Uh, don't think there needs to be too much said about this game. It's actually an entertaining game. Went to OT. Uh, I, so the Colts in like a minute and a half went right down the field and scored a touchdown. I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. I think the Colts are honestly gonna blow them out, win big. I kind of predicted that in my picks video for this game. That didn't exactly happen. Obviously, the game went to overtime. The Colts offense had a good game in this one. Joe Flacco swinging the ball. He didn't have a great completion percentage, but he had a good game in this one. Jonathan Taylor had a really good game. 34 carries is insane. That's crazy. Really nice balance from the Colts receiving core here. Downs and Pittman had good games. Alec Pierce getting 2 catches, 57 yards. My old guy, Mac Jones, I thought, played a decent game. Not a great game, not a poor game, kind of in between. Very little in the run game for the Jags. Brian Thomas, another stud, kind of like the Giants. Obviously, a disaster of a year for the Jags. But at least Brian Thomas had a good year. Like Malik Neighbors. Brenton Strange had a good game. Uh, Looking at these stats here, I definitely think the Colts outplayed them and deserved to win the game. I honestly was surprised that the I remember right the I'm trying to think here the oh yeah, the Jags tied it up late, and there was like a minute and change left on the clock, and I think the Colts were gonna go down the field and end up getting a field goal to win the game, but they didn't. They punted, and I'm like, wow, this game is really going to OT. And then the Jags defense held into a field goal. I'm like, they might win the game. Then Mac Jones took a bad sack, and I'm like, yep, that's pretty telling. Watching Mac Jones, the Patriots fan, uh, yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling of how the game went. Colts outplayed them in most categories here. Good win for the Colts to end the year. Obviously, a disappointing year for Indy. Had playoff aspirations. Obviously, a very disappointing game against the Giants last week. But they, bounced back, got a good win against a division rival, going to the offseason, on a dub. That's always a good sign. Jags disaster of a year. Fired Doug Peterson. The day after this game, just a mess of a year for them. At least they played at least maybe marginally better ball the back half of the year. Mac Jones didn't look completely disastrous for some of his games. But Jags, going to be interesting to see what happens to them in the offseason. Competitive game here, but Colts got the dub. At least they can end their season on a high note after that disaster against the Giants last week. Commanders Cowboys. This was another interesting game. The Cowboys defense really was eliminating the Commanders offense, and Jane Daniels was in the game. Yeah, Jane Daniels only went 6-12 with 38 yards. Then Mariota came in and their offense looked unstoppable. Uh, I mean, he was also their leading rusher, Marcus Mariota. They pretty much nothing in the run game. Their quarterbacks, Mariota and Daniels, were basically their entire run game. Austin Ekeler is back, though. Good to see him back from IR. Terry McLaurin had a good game, caught the game-winning touchdown right at the end with like 6 seconds left, somewhere around there. Zach Ertz, another touchdown catch for him. He's been really good this year, too. Pretty solid game from him. Trey Lance actually had a pretty solid game. Maybe the stats don't show that, but I thought he was slinging it, having a good game. Good to see him have a good game. Rico Dowdle, not a lot of yards for carry, but 72 yards a touchdown. I think a solid game from him. Jalen Tolbert, good game. Turpin, good game. And then, a couple catches from all their guys. I guess good balance. Lance spreading the ball out. Looking at these team stats here, I think they're pretty telling of how the game went. 'Cause it feels like the Commanders did maybe steal this game a bit. The Cowboys were leading most of it, and the Commanders, got the touchdown to give them the win, take the lead with like 6 seconds left, I think, somewhere around there, right at the end. That the Cowboys are leading the game most of it. It looked like that the Commanders were going to lose the game. The Packers were going to beat the Bears. Packers were going to get the 6 seed. That didn't happen. I think that would have made a massive difference because I would have picked the Packers to probably, maybe not 100%, but I probably would have picked the Packers to beat the Bucs had they gotten the 6 seed. And I definitely would have picked the Eagles to beat the Commanders in round one. The Commanders got the 7 seed, but obviously that didn't happen. That would have been an interesting playoff. I definitely would have picked the Eagles, but I wouldn't be shell shocked if the Commanders pulled off that upset round one against the Eagles. But anyway, that's not going to happen. I'm getting off topic here. Commanders won the game to the 6th seed. Packers lost anyway. So even the Commanders lost this game, the Packers still would have been the 6th seed. Can't believe they lost to the Bears. I think that game's next. But yeah, a lot of these stats, some of them are close. Some of them, the Cowboys outplayed them in by decent margins. Especially total plays, Cowboys had 20 more, and they won the time session battle by a decent margin too, about 15, 14 minutes of your round there. But yeah, Mariota was clutch. He led a super late touchdown drive again with 6 seconds left. They spiked the ball. They waited a couple seconds to spike it. I'm like, that might, they might have just blew it there. They might have to play for OT. And they end up getting touchdown on to McLaurin. So yeah, I think that's pretty symbolic of how the year ended for the Cowboys. Their defense giving up a touchdown in crunch time to lose the game. That's pretty symbolic of how bad their defense has been most of this year. Going to be interesting to see what they do with Mike Zimmer. I honestly think they're going to keep him. It also looks like they're going to keep Mike McCarthy, with Jerry denying the Bears' request to interview him. So, yeah, I think this was actually a pretty entertaining game. Looks like Dallas is going to win. They were in the lead most of the game. Commanders put a drive together late, got that touchdown, finished 12-5. I don't think anyone had them at 12-5. So really good win for the Commanders. Obviously very much overachieved expectations this year. Dallas, oh boy, I didn't expect them to be great this year. I think I only predicted them to go 10-7, and they played better the back half of the year. But oh boy, Dallas. And I know they got injuries and stuff, and Dak especially getting hurt, but oh boy, I don't know. Cooper Rush played decent ball. Just underachieving for the Cowboys. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to them in the offseason. But a good win for the Commanders. Obviously, heading into the playoffs. 12-5. That's hard to believe. They were 7 I think they were 7-5 at one point. So I think they were 7-5 after they lost to Dallas. So they've won 5 in a row heading into the playoffs. So getting hot at the right times. They're good for Washington. Dallas, tough loss in this one. Yep, Bears Packers. Oh boy, this is a weird game. I mean, I don't know how the Packers lost this game. That was just yes, I'm pretty sure the Packers had a decent amount of backups in there, but which I'm a bit surprised about because they should try for the 6th seed because you'd much rather play the Bucks. Well, at this point, it was either they were going to play the NFC South winner or the Rams, which I would rather play either of those teams than the Eagles round one. But it seems like the Packers didn't really care too much, which I guess credit to them if they're just gonna be willing to play anyone. But that's an argument itself. The strategic argument, what you want to do, you want to play for seeding, you don't really care. That's the strategic argument there. Is it worth the player risk to move up one seed? Who knows? Yeah, Caleb Williams, from the stats, he played a decent game. I mean, the Bears' offense was a real. I just talk about conservative. I barely remember Caleb Williams attempting to pass more than like 5 yards in this game. It was just all screen passes and checkdowns, it felt like. He did have that throw to DJ Moore to help them get into field goal range to. Well, it got them into field goal range. They spiked it, and then Santos made the game-winning field goal as time expired. I don't know what the hell the Packers were doing defensively on that last play. They were playing way too soft of a coverage on that play. No one was in the middle of the field guarding the field goal range line. That they had plenty of time to get into field goal range and spike the ball. They only had 2 seconds left, but still, Packers should have been playing better defense, tighter defense, not playing as off as they did in that situation. Bears were in the lead pretty much the entire game, and then the Packers were down 8. They got a touchdown, 2-point conversion. Jordan Love got hurt in this game. He hit his funny bone. He said, hopefully he's good to go against the Eagles round one. I'm gonna assume he's gonna tough it out and play in that game. But Malik Willis on the 2-point conversion just like lost his handle on the ball. That was not a pretty play. But Caleb DJ Moore rather fumbled the ball and the Packers recovered. I'm like, all right, yep, they're gonna win the game. Another heartbreaking loss to the Bears. Bears defense did a pretty solid game in this one. They stopped the Packers, and I'm like, yep, the Bears are gonna win the game now. McManus made a long field goal. I thought he was gonna miss it. He made the field goal. Again, Bears got into field goal range, spiked it with like 2 seconds left. Very questionable defense from the Packers on the play, and they won the game. Yeah, Caleb Williams, I guess a decent game from him. Played clutch football, I guess you can say. DeAndre Swift, not a great game. He did have a touchdown, 65 yards. That's a solid game, I guess. DJ Moore, pretty consistent game. Yeah, Malik Willis, I guess he played a solid game just from the stats here. He only had 3 incompletions. Jordan Love wasn't really getting too much going. Yeah, Manuel Wilson. Yeah, Josh Jacobs didn't play in this game. Manuel Wilson had a good game. So did Chris Brooks. Pretty nice balance between them. Sorry, Josh Jacobs did play in this game. I'm thinking of someone else, though, am I saying? He didn't have a lot of action in this game, though. He had 1 touchdown. He only had 6 carries in this one. He also had a catch for 2 yards. Malik Heath had a good game in this one, too. Dontavian Wicks, that's a pretty solid game. Unfortunately for the Packers, Christian Watson got hurt. He tore his ACL. So obviously he's out for the year, so that's a big blow to them. Feels like Christian Watson's always hurt, unfortunately. Yeah, Jayden Reed, 2 catches, too. Yeah, not a lot from the receivers, but, a decent balance from the guys that got involved. Looking at the team stats here, you're probably thinking, how the hell did the Packers lose this game? Especially because each team had 2 turnovers. Just from the stats, it's hard to tell, but the Bears were in control of this game. You would think the Packers outplayed them, but the Bears were in control of this game. The Packers would have stolen the game if they held on to win. The Bears definitely should have won this game. I was like, oh god, is Santos really going to miss another field goal? And one of the Packers went off a blocked field goal again against the Bears, second time this season. But yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling. Close in a lot of these categories for the most part. Yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling of how the game went. 6 yards per play to about 4 for the Bears. Packers got the advantage there. They had a couple deep pass plays that they got. They had like a 3rd and 22, I think they converted or something like that. That was insane. Yeah, Bears, they haven't won against the Packers in general, and I think since 2018. And that was the year they went 12-4, and the double doink to lose the Eagles in the wild card game. And they haven't won in Lambeau in, Jesus, I don't even remember how long it's been, but prior to this. But yeah, good win for the Bears. Obviously a disaster of a year after the Hail Mary. But, if you want to end your season, a disaster of a year like this, I don't think there's any better way to do it than beating your arch nemesis in the Packers on the road in Green Bay on a walk-off field goal, which cost you the first game. So pretty ironic ending there. Packers just very disappointing performance in this game. I mean, the Bears are an embarrassment this year. They're awful after the Hail Mary. I mean, what are you doing? Just not a great performance in the Packers. Just disappointing game. I know, they played their backups. Jordan Love got hurt and stuff, but just very disappointing for the Packers in this game. But good win for the Bears to end their year. Saints Bucks. So this was a pretty entertaining game. The Saints were leading for a good portion of it, and then the Bucks took the lead in the 4th. They got a touchdown late to go up 8. Saints got a couple first downs, made it interesting, and they failed to convert on a 4th down. The Bucks, instead of kneeling it out, Mike Evans needed 5 more yards. They gave him a pass, and Mike Evans got his 1,000 yards. I was getting really nervous for him, so I'm glad he ended up getting it. When Bucky Irving got the touchdown on the last drive, I'm like, oh my god, if the Saints, the only chance he's going to get 1,000 yards is if the Saints go down the field, score a touchdown, get a 2-point conversion, the game goes to overtime. That didn't happen, obviously, and he still got his 1,000 yard season. So good for Mike Evans. Spencer Rattler, I actually thought played a pretty solid game in this one. Pretty much nothing in the run game, though, for the Saints. Really good balance for the Saints receivers here. Juwan Johnson was a beast this game. Then after that, pretty MVS really good signing for the Saints this year. After all their injuries, Baker played a good game, I think, but the Bucks offense just not getting. They just came out not very great in this game, and it was like, are they seriously going to lose this game? And if they would have lost this game, I think Todd Bowles might have been fired. I mean, the Saints have been a mess this year after week two, pretty much. I mean, week three they lost a close one to Philly. Probably should have won that game. They didn't blow the man to man with the crossing route to Goddard, but I guess after week three, they've kind of been a disaster for the most part. Well, I guess they lost a close game to the Falcons too after that week. But I know some after their week two start when they looked like they were the greatest show on turf, everyone was picking them to win the Super Bowl. Well, not everyone, but people I think were as a joke saying they were going to go to the Super Bowl. Um, it was a disaster year. So are they seriously gonna? The Bucs gonna ball game at home? You just need a simple win and you win the division and they're gonna lose to the Saints like that. Not well prepared. They had a similar situation last year. They needed to win against the Saints. They would have clinched the division, and the Saints were better last year than they were this year. And the Bucs came out flat. They did not play well at all, and the Saints won in Tampa. The Bucs ended up winning the following week in Carolina. It was 9-0 though. That was when the Panthers were god awful last year. They were the worst team in football last year, and they they still won the game. They didn't look great in that game either. At least their offense did, and defense pitched a shutout at least. There was a bit of a it was a great play by Antoine Winfield. They forced a fumble that in the end zone that was a touchback. Otherwise, that would have been an interesting game. But anyway, back to this game here, getting off topic again. Baker, kind of an up and down game. He played clutch late, had an insane touchdown to Jalen McMillan. Jim McMillan got a taunting after a fourth down conversion, and then the refs were, confused. They were going to make it first and goal from like I don't know, the 20-yard line or something. Then the Bucs got another penalty, I think, and it was like a ridiculously long yardage, like first and 20 or something like that. And Baker ended up throwing a dime to Jalen McMillan for the touchdown. Bucs defense stepped up in the second half, played a good half, only allowed 3 points. So yeah, Baker, kind of an up and down game, but good game for the most part. Bucky Irving, good game. They should just ride the shit out of Bucky Irving. Pause. Bucky Irving has just been amazing this year. Electric player there. Baker had a lot of clutch rushes too. Some third and longs that he converted with his legs. Rashad White not getting involved in the run game at all. Wow. Um, Mike Evans had a good game. June McMillan had a good game. Yeah, Mike Evans, obviously, I mentioned, just got enough yardage to get his 1,000 yards there. June McMillan, that touchdown I mentioned. They're banged up, obviously, the Bucs receivers, but I'm still putting up 27 points against the Saints defense that can be dangerous. So good for the Bucs there. Look at the team stats here. Think they're pretty telling of how the game went. I do think the Bucs definitely deserved to win the game. Outplayed them in the second half, especially the fourth quarter. Played, crunch time football. Played a good clutch fourth quarter there. Yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling here. Both teams going to want to clean up the penalties. I guess the Saints are going to build off season to do that once they find their head coach there. Yeah, pretty entertaining game. This one, it looked like the Saints might pull off the upset. Just really, late in the game they were up. It was like, oh boy. But yeah, good come from behind win for the Bucs in this game. Seems like after Baker had a slide and they kind of got into a bit of a scuffle after that. Maybe Baker did it intentionally, knowing him. I wouldn't be surprised trying to get the guys fired up there. It seems like after that, the Bucs really kind of just snapped into it. So good win for the Bucs. Saints competitive, trying to play spoiler. They did for a bit, but couldn't pull it off. But Saints going to be an interesting offseason for them. But Bucs, good winning this one, coming from behind, as I mentioned. So win the game, win the division, get a home playoff game. Oh boy. Oh boy. Where do I even start? Okay, let me just talk about this game specifically, then I'll talk about us firing Mayo. Okay, so obviously the Bills played their backups this game, and we still barely won, first of all, with their starters in there. Trubisky, he was just a game manager, played decent, I guess. Um, Mike White did not play a good game. It looked like they honestly were trying to lose purposely almost at the end of the game. Ray Davis, he played decent. James Cook had a touchdown, but otherwise, and then only 2.8 yards per rush. Um, Curtis Samuel had a good game. He's been very quiet all year. Then outside of that, not too much. I guess Coleman and Matt Collins catching a couple passes. Quentin Morris too. Drake May only played one drive in this game, so you can't really evaluate him from that. Obviously, an incompletion and a sack was his whole game. Then Joe Milton played the rest of the game. Joe Milton played a hell of a game. Very impressive from Joe Milton. Even some people saying maybe he should start over May. That's kind of ridiculous. After one, yes, Joe Milton balled out, but it was against the backups of the Bills, and we still barely won the game. Um, yeah, Gibson, not too much in the run game in general. Ramondre Stevenson didn't even play. That's kind of a bummer to see. Keyshawn Boutte, he had a nice touchdown catch on an improv from Joe Milton. Joe Milton also had an insane touchdown to Pop Douglas. It didn't count because there was a holding penalty. What a surprise, a holding penalty on our offensive line. But apparently that was like the second fastest football throw like in recorded history. Jordan Love is the first against the Texans this year, and my guy Tom Brady is number 3. So that's insane. Yeah, Bazooka Joe put a hell of a game. It's very entertaining to see him play this game. I thought that it might be a disaster if he gets in there. He might turn the ball over. That did not happen, so I'm glad to see that. Uh, but yeah, Keyshawn Boutte, he had a really good year this year. I mean, he was our wide receiver one this year, pretty much. And last year he was doghouse, barely even played. And yeah, he had a good year this year. Made some impressive catches. He had a couple plays like the Cardinals where he's tipping the ball and it's getting picked. And I'm like, Jesus, like what are we doing? Outside of Keyshawn Boutte, we didn't really get too much going from the receiving core. I do hope we re-sign Austin Hooper though. I like that signing. Obviously, Pop Douglas. I love Pop Douglas. Uh, Looking at the team stats here, I definitely think we outplayed the Bills, which again, it was their backup, so that doesn't really say too much. Uh, Looking at these stats here, I think, they're pretty telling of how the game went. Yeah, but definitely would say they're probably pretty telling of how the game went. We outplayed the Bills in most of the categories, though close. Um, yeah, obviously the Bills, they're backups. This is probably what, most people expected. I don't know. This is a hard game to predict. I predicted us to lose this game. I think the Bills' backs are going to win anyway. Played a bit better than I expected. I thought this win was going to keep Mayo his job. She did not. And then, actually, real quick before I get to that, obviously a bunch of people were upset. So if we would have lost this game, we would have had the first pick. So everyone or most people were pissed that we lost the game. I always pull for my team to win, but even I was a little pissed. I mean, I was happy we won, but I was like pissed that we blew the first pick at the same time. So, we would have been able to package it, get a bunch out of it. Because obviously we don't need a quarterback with May. So I do hope we keep Joe Milton as backup, though. Percent I think is on a 1 year, so I'm sure we'll sign some QB3 to or he can compete with Milton for the backup to May. But anyway, so yeah, a lot of people pissed about that we blew the first overall pick. Mayo getting fired. I thought he was going to keep his job after this game. He was all smiles when we won the game at the end. He probably thought he was going to keep his job. And I'm like, yep, we're going to keep Mayo, which, Ian, Mayo's a really nice guy, it seems like, so I feel bad saying this, but I do think he needed to be fired. I don't think he should have been hired in the first place. I was okay with it at first, but, the way this season played out, I was like, yeah, as it progressed, and then really after that Chargers game, like, yeah, that's it. I think this guy needs to be fired. And, breaking it down real quick, yes, Gerard Mayo obviously got a short stick because the roster, you can make an argument, was the worst roster in the league. There was not high expectations for us this year. We weren't expecting to make the playoffs. but it still does not. And we finished the record. I actually predicted us to go 4-13, so at least we won. I didn't exactly get the games we won and lost right, but at least I got our total record right. Most people expected us to finish around 4-13, somewhere around there. So I guess he just from a win loss perspective, he kind of met expectations. He only won 4 games last year with Bill, but I mean, yes, Mayo didn't have high expectations. We were in a rebuild year, and so people are saying, we fired him year one, rebuild year. What are we doing? A lot of good coaches, their first year, it's a disaster. But the difference is Mayo just did not seem like the guy. I do not think Mayo, at least, he just seemed too. It didn't seem like he was ready to be the head coach yet. And there's reports coming out now saying he did all these things, like for example, he played cards with the players on the flight back after the Cardinals game when his staff was breaking down film. You know, he's trying to be a player's coach too much. He just didn't seem ready for the head coaching gig. Kraft talked about it in his press conference. Uh, you know, Kraft blamed himself for it. It doesn't. I don't know. Just the expectations were low, and you can argue that he should have had another year. The expectations were low. We're in a rebuild year. I understand that. He just did not seem like the guy, and it felt like regressed as the year went on, and the coaching got worse and worse. And I don't know. I don't think Mayo is the guy, at least now. Like, I can't see Mayo being you don't have to be a hard ass coach, but if a player fucks up or screws up, I don't see Mayo ripping into them. Like, if you know that's a situation that the player should get ripped into. I don't think Mayo is going to be ripping into the guys on really breaking it and trying to emphasize things on film. I don't think Mayo is going to be the guy that like puts together this great game plan to outcoach like a playoff coach to get us a big playoff win, things like that. I just do not. I did not see us being, you know, back to where we want to be in the playoffs and having playoff success with Gerard Mayo. It just did not seem like he was ready to be a head coach. Didn't seem like he had the I don't know how to phrase it. I don't know, maybe not personality, but he just didn't seem like he was ready. And he was rushed into it a bit. Kraft talked about it. I'm just wondering when Kraft made the decision to fire him because it came after like an hour after the game, somewhere around there when we fired Mayo, and there was a whole written statement prepared. So obviously that statement was, well crafted before. No pun intended with Robert Kraft and the Kraft family, but it was well crafted beforehand. So obviously the decision was made. I'm going to assume at least before this game, probably I don't know sometime in advance, maybe a couple weeks. A reporter asked him that, and Kraft just said, I think kind of late in the season, like a month ago, is when he felt things weren't right. So maybe after that Cardinals game, I don't know. I really hope we hire Mike Vrabel. We're interviewing a bunch of coaching candidates. I know Ben Johnson would obviously be very nice. I think he'd do wonders with May, but I would just prefer a coach with head coaching experience at this point. I think Mike Vrabel would be a perfect fit with us. I wanted us to hire him last year. We should have just hired him last year, especially now that we fired Mayo. And I assumed at the time when we fired Mayo that Kraft and Vrabel maybe had a non-verbal agreement that Vrabel was going to be the next head coach of our team. But it seems like we're taking our time with the interview process, even though a report came out that said we want to hire a head coach by the end of the week, or on the weekend. So obviously, if that happens, it won't be Ben Johnson unless it's a non-verbal agreement. He's still coaching with the Lions. You got to wait till their season ends. I think it's going to be Mike Vrabel. I'd be surprised if it isn't. I think he's a perfect fit with us. I think maybe I've talked about it in my videos. I'm not exactly sure. I feel like I have. I'm not sure though. But I think Mike Vrabel would be a perfect fit with us. Obviously, he is the connection here. Won 3 Super Bowls with us. Is the connection with the Crafts. Uh, I just think his coaching style fits our team and our culture perfectly. We are in need of a culture change. So I think Mike Vrabel is kind of hard nosed, grind it out, tough it out culture would be really good for us. Mike Vrabel knows how to get the best out of his players, be a competitive coach and team. Maybe not the best roster. We saw that with some of his Titans teams. That obviously is kind of our case. We have the most cap space in the league. We get Drake May. We get a lot, to build off of and are very appealing for head coaching openings. I would be honestly I would go near. I'll just say it. I would be shocked if it's not Mike Vrabel. I think it's just too perfect to happen, at least on paper. If it's not Mike Vrabel, I would like Ben Johnson number two. Then number three, I'd probably say Brian Flores, but I don't think we plan on interviewing him. We interviewed Aaron or are interviewing Aaron Glenn though. Aaron Glenn, I wouldn't be too high on if we hired him here. I don't think he's a great fit for us. The Saints, I think he's a great fit for though. That seems like he's going to go there. Actually, I don't know. I'd have to feel it out more. I don't think Aaron Glenn would be an awful hire, but I think he'd be a decent hire for us. But I don't think he'd be our, the ideal head coach. I just hope it's Vrabel. I don't mean to talk about this game too much. Uh, Still got a bunch of other games to talk about here. But yeah, yeah, this is this was an interesting game to say the least. Just, I don't know, just firing Mayo just brings up a lot of questions. I do think it's the right decision. We also fired Alex Van Pelt, which I was I was kind of 50-50 on. If we kept him, I would have been fine with it. If we moved on from him, I would have been fine with it. But I'm shocked that Covington, our defensive coordinator, DeMarcus Covington, has not been fired. I thought if AVP is getting fired, I think he's certainly better than Covington. Then Covington has to get fired. He's not been fired yet. He's actually interviewing with the Bengals for their DC position, which that would be a complete disaster if they hired him. Poor Joe Burrow, I fear, after they fired Lou Anarumo. But anyway, not to get too off topic, um, and I'll probably give my full thoughts on the Gerard Mayo situation. Like I kind of gave most from here, I think, but I'll give my full thoughts on the Gerard Mayo situation for my end of the year video for all the teams. I think, uh, hope we'll probably have a head coach hire by then. But yeah, I prefer if we take our time though. Uh, I was talking about this one of my buddies earlier. Shout out Nate if you're watching this video. He was saying that we should take our time with the hiring process, not kind of predetermine it, because look what just happened with Gerard Mayo. Obviously, Mike Vrabel is better than Gerard Mayo, at least on paper, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, you guys get the point, hopefully. But anyway, I won't talk about this game anymore. I'll talk about whatever the next game is. But Bills, you know, not a great performance, obviously, with their backs in there. Don't want to take very little away from this game. You might see they lost to us, like, okay, what the hell, Bills? But they played their backups, probably some vanilla coverages. Didn't want to give away too much in the film department, I'm sure. Put a lot on tape. So, yeah, Bills weren't trying, their hardest to win the game, I guess. But, I guess a decent win for us, even though we blew the first pick. At least we got a win to end the year. Chargers Raiders. This was a close game early on. The Raiders actually had the lead. They were up 10-3. And it's like, okay, Chargers, like we need to win the game here if you want to get the 5 seed and play the Texans rather than the Ravens, because I would have certainly picked the Ravens to beat them if they matched up. But the Texans are obviously the draw that both them and the Steelers want to get, the ideal draw. They're definitely the weakest out of the division winners in the AFC. And yeah, after they were down 10-3, they got 2 field goals. They got a touchdown uh, at the at the end of the second quarter. They got a 2-point conversion to McConkey, and then they just took control from that point on. Their defense played well. They held them to a field goal. They got a touchdown super late with only like a couple of seconds left on the clock. So that made the game a bit more close on the scoreboard than it appears, or than it played out really. Herbert, I thought, played a really good game, really phenomenal game from Herbert in this one. They did start out a bit slow. Not a lot in the run game, but a decent amount of carries for Dobbins. Uh, Quentin Johnson went off in this game. Career highs for him in both catches and yards, so good for him. Conkey had a good game. What a surprise. God, I wish we drafted him. Will Dissly, good game, caught a touchdown. DJ Chark caught a touchdown, too. I remember when he was on the Jags. Now he's been so quiet since then, really. Aiden O'Connell, I actually thought played a solid game. He's actually been playing some solid ball the past couple weeks. I don't think he's their franchise guy at quarterback, but he's actually played some solid ball. They should probably keep him as a backup. Nothing in the run game per usual for the Raiders. Jacoby Myers, good game. Brock Bowers, good game per usual. Set the rookie record for most receptions. Broke the record Malik Neighbors set earlier in the day. Um, Looking at the team stats here, I think they're pretty telling of how this game went. Chargers outplayed the Raiders pretty much all the categories here. Um, yeah, the game pretty much went how these stats suggest, I think. And again, the Raiders got a garbage time touchdown, so it really was more of a blowout, even than the score indicated. Two possessions isn't really a blowout, but yeah, the Chargers took control after they were down 10-3, and especially after they got the lead heading into halftime. They took full control, took care of business. Raiders fired Antonio Pierce. I kind of was leaning towards they might keep him, but they didn't. It apparently was kind of a split decision, kind of a back and forth move, and they fired him. Raiders are trying to get Vrabel though with Brady. Oh God, please Vrabel, don't go there. Please go to us instead. But Chargers, good win, 5 seed. Yeah, good win, put up 34 points. Your defense played pretty well. Again, the 20 points, 7 of them came super late, but your defense played pretty well. They finished the number one scoring defense by 2 points to the Eagles, I think. So good for the Chargers. Defense played a hell of a year for most of it. Really, that Bucks game and the second half of that Bucks game in specific, and the first half of that Denver game a couple days later on Thursday night. Besides those two games, their defense played a hell of a year. Number one scoring defense. Jesse Minter did a hell of a job. Looks like they're going to get him back next year. He doesn't have any interview requests. Even if he does any interview requests, I don't think he's going to get a head coaching gig. I think he needs another year. So, and that defense is only going to get better, I think. And it's already the best scoring defense, top scoring defense this year. And I think their offense is going to get better too. Chargers, I mean, look out, look out. I could see them making a playoff run this year. I think they're definitely going to beat the Texans, and then, I don't think it's absolutely out of the question they upset the Chiefs in the divisional round. I don't think they're going to get to the Super Bowl. I don't think they'll beat either the Bills or the Ravens, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Chargers, their postseason run ends. But Raiders, merciful end to their year, obviously far under exceeded expectations. Rough year for them. At least they were competitive in this game for part of it. Chargers, good win, head into the postseason. Good job getting that 5 seed. 49ers, Cardinals. This game did not go how I expected. I thought the Niners were going to win. I actually felt decent about that. I thought Josh Dobbs is going to have kind of a dramatic Dobbs mania moment, win the game. Did not happen. It was close throughout the game, kind of back and forth. Did not expect the Cardinals to score 47. The Niners fired their DC Nick Sorensen, but he might stay on the staff. I don't think I've ever seen that before, actually. A coordinator getting fired, but they might stay on the staff. Josh Dobbs, I think he played a good game, but did have 2 picks. So obviously, that's not ideal. He had 326 yards, though. That'll work. Patrick Taylor had a really good game. Ricky Pearsall had a good game. He played good in the Lions game, too. So good to see him getting involved. Chris Connolly, he used to be my Madden guy when I played as the Chiefs all the way back in Madden, what was it, 17? Um, Juwan Jennings had a good game too. He got ejected. He was going to get 1,000 yards. It seemed like he was only 25 yards away, and he got ejected in the second quarter, I believe. So obviously that hurt Juwan Jennings. Looked like he was definitely going to get 1,000 yards, and he gets ejected. Eric Saubert, my one of my buddies and I that play Superstar K all the time, Superstar KO all the time on Madden. Shout out Mike if you're watching this video. We run stick and nod all the time. We're Dot City, and Eric Saubert's the default tight end on the play, and he's always wide open. He's like the GOAT in that game mode for whatever reason. So shout out Eric Saubert. Got a touchdown against the Dolphins 2 weeks ago, too. Kyler played a really good game in this one. 4 touchdowns. That'll work. Nice balance here between Tony Jones and Michael Carter. Tony Jones got a touchdown run late, so that's going to up his yards per carry almost to 14. Kyler, a couple rushes too. DJ Dallas, 22 yards carry. I guess that'll work. Obviously 1 carry though. Trey McBride, good game. He's a beast this year. It felt like Marvin Harrison, really good game too. Definitely looking forward to seeing what those guys do next year. Greg Dortch, very kind of under the radar receiver over the past couple of years. He had 2 touchdowns in this one, 447, good game. Zay Jones getting involved. So yeah, pretty good game from the Cardinals receiving core there. We'll get the team stats here. I think they're pretty telling of how the game went. Kind of close in a lot of these categories. So it's like, how did the Niners lose by 23 points? Again, turnovers, that's one reason, and penalties. Those are probably the 2 key reasons to why they lost by so much. Did not expect the Niners to lose this game. Felt fairly confident they would win, and they didn't. The Cardinals, I mean, they were up 16, and then they got that touchdown run to they were going to win anyway, but really put the game away. Just obviously a disappointing game for the 49ers. At least their offense played well. Obviously a very disappointing year for the Niners. They had injuries, kind of similar to the 2020 season, it felt like. 2020 season, they were coming off a Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs, just like they were this year. They had a bunch of injuries, and they did not play well. They had a bad record. Same with this year. Not a great performance in the Niners. Obviously, a very disappointing season. Cardinals, at least they got a good win to end the year. They can go into this offseason with some momentum, maybe put up 47 points, offense playing well, defense, looking good through parts of the year. 8-9. I think that's kind of where maybe overexceed expectations a little bit, but kind of where I think most people expected the Cardinals this year. At one point, they were leading the division. It looked like they might win the division. They didn't, obviously. But, Cardinals go out into the offseason with a dub against your division rival. Good win at home. Niners disappointing end to the game and a disappointing end to the year. Oh, boy. Chiefs Broncos. Okay, well, not much to say about this game, I don't think. I mean, the score explains this game. I mean, the Chiefs, I cannot stand them. I absolutely despise them. I hate the I hate the Chiefs. NFL meme just posted the Bengals will be resting their starters week 19. That's funny. Even though I've liked the Bengals and was pulling for them to make it. But I mean, I hate the Chiefs, but I mean, and it's satisfying seeing them lose, especially getting their asses kicked like this. But literally the one time I needed them to win is when they put up a game like this. Hopefully they look like this in the postseason and they get eliminated in the divisional round in their first game. Obviously not going to happen, almost certainly. Carson Wentz, I mean, no one played good on the Chiefs. I don't think one player played good on the Chiefs. Carson Wentz didn't play good, nothing in the run game. I honestly thought this game could be close. I wouldn't have been shocked if the Broncos lost this game. The Chiefs backups won, especially because Carson Wentz is a capable backup. He won week 18 last year, and that was against the Niners backups, but still played good last year. Just a disaster of a game for the Chiefs, but no one played good. Offensively, I mean, nothing, very little from the receiving core there. Remigo, at least he played, 2 catches at least. Hendershot getting 2 catches at least for 25 yards. Bo Nix played a phenomenal game. I mean, he only had 3 incompletions. He played great. That's insane. The Broncos got just absolutely everything to go their way. Not saying that they got lucky. I just mean anything they wanted, they got in this game. They did have kind of one lucky touchdown. It got deflected like 3 times in the end zone and got caught for the touchdown for the Broncos. So maybe the Chiefs, maybe hopefully this is the start of their luck running now, because plays like that, I'm honestly surprised they even won a game like that this season. That's probably all they'll win the Super Bowl with our luck rooting against the Chiefs. They'll probably have like 14 deflections in the end zone and they'll get caught to win the game. And then Nick Wright can tweet, "Never a doubt. I knew that there was going to be 14 deflections, and we were going to win the Super Bowl off of 14 deflections." God, that triggers me when he says "never a doubt." Um, anyway, uh, getting off topic again. Bo Nix is their leading rusher too. Not much in the run game outside of Bo Nix. Sutton had a good game. He got his incentive in this one and a touchdown. Marvin Mims, 2 touchdowns. I mean, really, all the receivers had good games pretty much. Bailey had a touchdown. I think he was the one that caught all those deflections and caught that touchdown pass. Looking at the team stats here, definitely telling. Broncos literally outplayed them in every category. I mean, really, 29-5 first downs. I mean, Jesus. That is just awful for the Chiefs. Broncos just outplayed them in all the categories, won 38-0. Definitely pretty telling of how the game went. Now, is this a sign of concern for the Chiefs? Obviously, when you lose a game 38-0, you get your asses kicked in literally every metric possible. Usually, yes. And I do think there is some minor level of concern for the Chiefs here. But again, it was their backups. And I think the Chiefs just ran very vanilla coverages, defensive plays, offensive plays. I don't think they wanted to put anything on film this game, so they just ran a lot of vanilla things. Basically, they're not doing their normal defensive schemes, their blitz schemes, their normal offensive schemes, things like that. I don't think they want to put anything on the film really. So I mean, that's why a reason why they shit the bed so much. But I do think there has to be some level of concern, even though it's the backups. I mean, I guess the Butker. Here is one concern though. Butker missed. It was a 50-something yarder, I think, a 51-yarder, I think. He missed a field goal kick. He normally would make them. He seems like automatic in his entire career. It feels like, but he has not been good since he's come back from his injury. Missed a decent amount of kicks, so that might be a slight sign of concern for the Chiefs in the playoffs. That would be really satisfying if he missed like a crucial kick in the playoffs, maybe one to like lose them a playoff game, because he's been super clutch for them. It seems like he could make a kick from 100 yards if they needed him to. It's ridiculous. So it'd be nice if they finally maybe got a bit of luck the other teams have with their kickers not being like automatic like Butker is. The Chiefs are the luckiest team in sports history, so who knows. But yeah, I don't know, who knows. But anyway, yeah, maybe some slight concern for the Chiefs, even though I was pulling for them to win so the Bengals could get in. Hate the Chiefs. Hope they lose every game that Mahomes starts for the rest of his career. I cannot stand them. Hate Mahomes and Chiefs. It's so satisfying it's still satisfying to see, even though it's the backups, see them get their asses kicked and them lose. Having the single luckiest season in sports history. So hopefully maybe this game is the start of some of their luck turning around. But Denver's in the playoffs. I think they're going to get blown out by the Bills, but they overexceeded expectations. I don't think anyone expected them to make the playoffs. So good win for Denver. Good to see them in the playoffs, I guess. I'm a Pats fan. I'm not too high on Denver, obviously. Is in terms of pulling for them to win, but I guess after their long drought, it is good to see Denver in the playoffs here. A couple games left here. Seahawks Rams. This was an interesting game because the Rams sat their starters, but they could have played for the 3 seed, but they played for the 4 seed, knowing that. Well, not they played to win the game, obviously, but I think they played this game with the intent of being the 4 seed, knowing they're going to have to play the loser of Lions Vikings, a 14-win team. So again, kind of similar to the Packers, where it's like maybe they have the mentality of we'll just play anyone, we don't really care, we're gonna have to beat the best, so we want to be where we're at anyway. So, or get to where we want to be. So, credit to them for that mindset, but can argue again, I was talking about with the Packers Bears game that you might want to take a more strategic approach and go for the 3 seed. And they still nearly won this game. You have to imagine they played their starters, they would have won the game. Jimmy G played a really solid game in this one, I think. He did that pick, kind of blanking on it off the top of my head, but he did have a good game. Not too much in the run game for the Rams, although Ronnie Rivers got a couple nice rushes. Blake Corum broke his oh God, I forget the exact injury. I want to say like broke his arm or something like that. I really like Blake Corum at Michigan, so that's kind of a bummer to see him be out the rest of the year. Really nice balance for the Rams receivers here. Pretty much all of them had good games in this one. Again, it was kind of the backups for the most part, outside of Higbee, really. Um, and maybe Tutu Atwell, too. Um, Seahawks, Geno Smith played a really good game. Uh, not too much going in there. Well, actually, yeah, pretty good balance in the run game for the Seahawks in this one. They actually fired Ryan Grubb, which I'm a little surprised at. I think it's just because he kind of failed to establish a consistent run game. I'm honestly surprised that they fired him a bit, though. Um, a bit surprised, I mean. But yeah, pretty good run game in this one. From the receiving perspective, Noah Fant had a good game. Metcalf, good game. AJ Barner had a good game. Um, yeah, there's that. Tyler Lockett kind of been quiet for most of the season, it felt like. Looking at these stats here, very close game. I think the stats are definitely pretty telling of how this game went. Uh, Rams outplayed the Seahawks in some categories. Seahawks outplayed them in some categories. Yeah, definitely pretty telling of how the game went, I think. Again, it went right down to the wire. The Seahawks were up 14-3 early, and said, "Yep, okay, this is probably how it's going to go." And then the Rams battled back. They tied it late, and then the or they were down two. Like they were down 8. They got a touchdown. The 2-point conversion failed, and the actually, I think the Rams were leading leagues. They got a field goal after that. I think then the Seahawks got a touchdown. Their 2-point conversion wasn't good. Let me do some quick math in my head here. Try to remember. Um, yeah, they were down 1 late, if I remember right. Seahawks. They got a touchdown. Geno clutch drive. Noah Fant he almost like landed. I thought he was going to be like paralyzed the way he landed. He landed on the back of his neck. That was kind of scary, but he got up. Thankfully, he's fine. Um, and then the Rams, Jimmy G for the 4th down led them down the field. There was very little time left. I forget exactly how much time left. Very little time left on the clock. 4th down, and they had the play there. Jimmy G just short balled it a little bit, and the Seahawks took over on downs and kneeled it out to win the game. But the Rams nearly won this game still with Jimmy G. It was a very entertaining game, back and forth game. And again, you have to imagine the Rams, if they would have played the starters, they would have won the game with their backups being in and it being a 5-point game, and you nearly win the game still at the end with a game-winning drive. You had to lead late, again, up 1 late in the 4th, or relatively late in the 4th, if I remember right. And if they were the 3 seed, they would be playing the Commanders. That would have been an interesting game, but I probably would have taken the Rams in that game. They very well could beat the Vikings, and I'm kind of leaning towards the Vikings in that game. But anyway, so a good performance in the Rams with their backups in there. And again, got to give them credit, even though you can argue they should have played it more strategically, trying for the 3 seed, that they don't really give a shit who they play in the playoffs. They're going to have to beat the best teams. They want to get to where they're at. So credit to them for that mindset, I guess. It's Seahawks. They were my sleeper team going into the year. I think I had them at I want to say like 7-10, maybe 8-9. I think 7-10. So they overexceeded my expectations a bit. So 10-7. So they were my super team going into the year. Even though I had them at 7-10, I thought that they could finish around like 9-8. 10-7. I thought at the time might have been stretching it a bit. If that's what they finished, 10-7. Again, even though the Rams played their starters, they probably would have won this game. They would have finished 9-8 the Seahawks. But Seahawks, good way to end the year. over a gritty division rival and getting some revenge for the first matchup, even though it was the Rams backups again. But yeah, Seahawks 10 wins. They they're building something there, I think. Mike McDonald's just going to get better as head coach. The defense is going to get better. It looks like Geno, they're going to run it back with him. So I'm not a big Geno guy. I think he can only take them so far. So, but it looks like they're going to run it back with him. I guess they could, they could be good with Geno, I guess. But yeah, Seahawks building something special there. Good year for them. And the Rams, going to be interesting what happens to them in the playoffs. Good game in that one. Dolphins, Jets. So again, I mentioned it earlier. This game kind of went similar to how I expected. I expected Rodgers to have a good game and the Jets to have a good performance and win the game. I think I said they would win in dramatic fashion. That didn't really exactly happen. They were up 2 scores late. The Dolphins offense just did not do much in this game. They got 2 field goals early on. They were up 6-0. And then yeah, trying to remember exactly. And then yeah, after that, they really didn't do anything to the fourth quarter. They got 2 touchdowns. They made it a 1-score game. The Jets ended up getting a couple third downs. Rodgers to Adams. He had a deep ball to Adams that was clutch. Otherwise, Dolphins would have got the ball back with a chance to take the lead late. Even if they would have won this game, they wouldn't have made the playoffs with the Broncos slaughtering the Chiefs. Tyler Huntley, not a great game, but not an abysmal game. I don't think either of those 2 picks, obviously not pretty. Devon Achane had a really good game. He had a touchdown run late that cut into the deficit, made it a 1-score game. Receiving core for the Dolphins, Jonnu Smith, good game. And a touchdown late. Tyreek Hill, that's the big question. So I guess, decent balance between the rest of their guys there. Waddle, Craycraft, Washington, now Kingold, they're getting involved. They're fullback there. Tyreek Hill, that's the big talking point with this game. He basically said he wants out of Miami. And Mike McDaniel basically indirectly said that Tyreek kind of quit on the team late. Not surprised. Tyreek seems like a prick. I'm a Patriots fan, so I'm not a Tyreek Hill guy at all. Just seems like I don't know. He just seems like a diva to me. So I'm honestly not too surprised with that. If I had to pick right now, I would say the Chargers. I think Jim Harbaugh would straighten him out, and he would be a good fit with the Chargers. And they're obviously in the market for a top tier receiver to help Herbert out over there. That's the big story there. Another big story, Rodgers, I mentioned, a really good game. Is this his last game? That's a story. If I had to predict, I would say no. Will he be back with the Jets? I don't think so. So what team will want him? Honestly, I don't know. But I don't think Rodgers is going to be done, if I had to guess. But he had a really good game if it is his last game. Obviously, I'm not a big Aaron Rodgers fan, but if that is his last game, I do respect Rodgers. He's always been entertaining to watch. He's obviously an all-time great QB. One hell of a career, even though he only won 1 Super Bowl, he still had one hell of a career, and that's it. So kudos to Rodgers. Obviously, that's his last game. Breece Hall had a good game. He almost had 5 yards per carry. They very much underutilized him this year. Isaiah Davis had a good game too. Yeah, Davante Adams, I mentioned that Rodgers-Adams connection. That was evident in this game. Lazard getting a couple catches. Good balance between the Jets receivers there. Wilson getting involved a bit. He's also been a bit, iffy on his future with the Jets there. Looking at the team stats here, I think these stats are pretty telling. Close in some categories, actually close in most categories, but the turnovers definitely hurt the Dolphins. 4 turnovers to 1, and the Jets turnovers right at the start of the game. The Dolphins got a field goal out of it. Once the Jets defense held them to 2 field goals at the start, I'm like, all right, I'm actually feeling decent with this game. Their offense can figure it out, and that's exactly what happened. But yeah, I think these stats are pretty telling of how the game went for the most part, pretty much. Dolphins, some people wanted Mike McDaniel fired, that were fans of the Dolphins, but they're retaining him and their GM, so people aren't happy about that in particular, more so the GM staying. Uh, some people want Mike McDaniel gone, though. The Jets, obviously, they have a lot of work to do this offseason. This has to be the most, at least in recent memory that I can remember, the single or the most disastrous and like under under exceeded expectations, like single season of a sports team in recent memory. At least, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys know what I'm saying, that I can remember at least. Certainly in the NFL, I think, unless I'm missing someone obvious. But yeah, at least the Jets got a good win. Hopefully they get a feel good win heading into the off season. Fix their disaster mess. They got a million things to address, not just on the team, but management and stuff too, with Woody Johnson, their owner, friggin' nut job, it seems like. Dolphins got some things to solve too. Going to be interesting to see how their offseason goes. Both these teams going to be interesting to see how their offseason goes. But Dolphins disappointing end of the year, kind of fitting, honestly, the way the year went. Jets, again, good win, I guess, to end the year, give their fans something to be happy about. Oh boy, I am really pissed off at myself about this game because I kind of predicted it, sort of. I picked the Vikings to win, but in my video, I nearly switched to the Lions. I was kind of talking myself into picking the Lions, and I said I can even picture a scenario where the Vikings just have a really disappointing game. They're kind of due for one, and the Lions defense, like randomly, is a good game. That is exactly what happened. It was close early on. The Vikings defense was keeping the game close. The Vikings offense played awful in this game. Darnold played absolutely horrible this game. The Lions defense balled out. I'm not going to discredit them, but it was more so in the first half that Darnold was just off. He missed multiple touchdowns. He had some high throws. He on the first 4th and goal, Addison was wide open. It looked like he looked right at him and just didn't throw it to him. Then he highballed a couple, some questionable go for it on 4th down decisions. Uh, it seems like when the Vikings, they should have kicked field goals. They went for it when they should have went for it. They kicked field goals. It felt like pretty much very little in the passing department for the Vikings in this game. Yeah, Donald not a good game, obviously. This is I talked about it in one of my videos, maybe multiple, but the one thing with the Vikings I've noticed, they've obviously been very good this year offensively, obviously a very good team in general, but they do get a little too pass heavy, it feels like. Kevin O'Connell gets a little too pass heavy, and it was a one-score game the entire game until late. So you can say, well, they had 41 pass attempts because they were trailing. Well, not really. It was a one-score game until late in the game. Then the Lions really started adding on to the lead. Vikings defense definitely was doing its part early. They got a pick to set up the Vikings right in the red zone. They got an interception to set them up around midfield. The Vikings offense just could not do its part. And then the Vikings defense kind of, not collapsed, but the Lions offense found its footing as the game went on. And it got later and later. But yeah, I mean, you just look here. Cam Akers had a big rush, so his yards per carry are going to be a bit off. But it's still 4.5 yards per carry for Aaron Jones, and they barely ran it in the red zone. It felt like when Darnold was missing receivers left and right, either by being inaccurate or just not seeing them open. You should run the ball more, and they just kept passing it. Kevin O'Connell, I don't think called a very good. I'm a big Kevin O'Connell fan, but I don't think he called a very good game in this one. Lions ran a bunch of man coverage, and I don't think Kevin O'Connell called a lot of plays to beat man coverage in this game. I don't think Kevin O'Connell called a good game, and Darnold obviously did not play a very good game. From the receiving core, Jefferson and Nailor, good games. Jefferson only had 3 catches, but it's 54 yards. It's not a good game for Jefferson, obviously, for his standards, but, a decent game, I guess. Nailor, that's a good game for his standards, so he could play pretty good. Then outside of that, not too much. Goff played a really good game. I think those 2 picks, obviously those aren't pretty. One of them, the second one, that was a deep pass that Harrison Smith picked off. That wasn't very great. The screen pass, it just got tipped, so maybe not 100% on Goff on that one, if I remember right. yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously he went off in this game. Phenomenal game from him. He had 3 touchdowns. Actually, he had 4 because he had a receiving one. Yeah, he had a receiving touchdown too. Amon-Ra had a good game. Laporta a good game. JMO good game. Gibbs good game. So a pretty good balance in the Lions per usual from their receiving core. Definitely think these stats are pretty telling of how the game went. Lions outplayed the Vikings in most of the categories here. Literally all the categories actually, except penalties, I guess, and turnovers. Vikings didn't have any turnovers, but yeah, the Lions definitely outplayed them in this game. These stats are pretty telling of how the game went. Their defense, I'm very thoroughly impressed with how well their defense played. Anzalone coming back, he played a phenomenal game. He looks like a difference maker. Is their defense going to play well? With all the injuries, is their defense going to continue to play this well in the playoffs? I don't think as well as this game, but I think they could still play pretty well. Especially they might get some guys back, especially with the bye they have now. Vikings, I mean, at least the good news is I was saying they were due for a shitter. They were due for a loss, and they certainly got that out of the way. Certainly did not play good in this game. Their defense, as I mentioned, kept it close for a bit. Uh, yeah, so at least they got it out of the way going into the playoffs. Because had they won this game, they would have been 15-2, 1 seed. That would have been 10 wins in a row. Are they really going to win 13 games in a row to win the Super Bowl? That would have been a bit hard to see. So maybe at least they got their loss out of the way. But yeah, a lot of talk about is Darnold exposed? Is he going to shit the bed in the playoffs? Did the blueprint get laid out to beat the Vikings? I think Kevin O'Connell is going to adjust to that. Obviously, now that it happened, I think he's going to adjust to this game. If they get looks similar to how the Lions played them, Kevin O'Connell is going to adjust to it. He's a really good coach. I think he'll adjust to that. Um, them and the Rams. That's going to be a very interesting playoff game, though. But yeah, very disappointing game for the Vikings in this one. Game of the year written all over it, and just not a good game from the Vikings, obviously. Lions, I think, needed the 1 seed a bit more than the Vikings, just because with their injuries and they haven't had a bye, they had the earliest bye. So I think they did need and they're a very physical football team. I do think they needed the 1 seed a bit more than the Vikings. If they had gotten the 5 seed, I definitely could have seen them making a run still, but I think they definitely needed the 1 seed more than the Vikings needed it. Had the Vikings got it, I would have been interesting if the Vikings had got the 1 seed if they would have made been able to make a run there. Would have been interesting. I think a lot of it would have depended on who they played. They probably would have won their first round matchup. Actually, there's a good chance that these teams play in the divisional round again if the Vikings win. To see that, I could definitely see the Commanders upsetting the Bucs, and maybe I'm crazy, but I can see the Packers upsetting the Eagles. So there's a good chance if those two teams lose and the Vikings win, these two teams play round two. If the Lions had been the 5 seed, there's a good chance they would again these teams would have played round two. It just would have been in Minnesota rather than Detroit. So you can argue the Vikings might have been one and done, but coming off a bye against the Lions, who knows if they would have won? It's a hypothetical scenario. And then if they would have gone past the Lions, I would have had a hard time seeing them get past the Eagles. But who knows? Would they have made the Super Bowl if they got the 1 seed? Who knows? Lions, I do think needed it more than them, though. But yeah, very interesting week 18. Kind of felt a bit underwhelming for parts of it. That seemed like the consensus among people. But yeah, in that game, good win for the Lions. Disappointing for the Vikings. But yeah, kind of an underwhelming week 18. It felt like just I mean, week 18, you kind of expect, I don't want to say underwhelming, but I know that someone said underwhelming, and a decent amount of people were saying it was underwhelming. I kind of, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I guess we had a good mix of some good games, even some meaningless games that were good, like Jags Colts went to OT down on the wire. Uh, but yeah, Um, yeah, decent mix of games, I think. Maybe not underwhelming, but not the greatest week. Week 18 usually isn't with, teams being out and teams not people really not giving two shits about the meaningless games in terms of playoff seeding. Some teams benching starters, some playing backups, things like that. But yeah, I can't believe we're already at the end of the regular season this season, even though it's been nothing but pain for me for the most part as a Patriots fan and betting and fantasy and all that stuff. It's been a complete, definitely the most frustrating and pain-inducing single season I think I've had as a sports fan. It has still flown by. Love football so much. I'm an absolute football junkie. Season absolutely flew by. I am going to make recap videos for each of the playoff rounds here, so the wild card divisional round, conference championship round, and the Super Bowl. Uh, so be on the lookout for those videos. But this is my last one for the regular season this year. I can't believe it. Thank you guys for sticking with me throughout my videos here. I obviously this is my first year doing this channel. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, got something out of my content. Just wanted a platform to express my passion for sports. Hopefully you guys enjoyed these videos. Again, it's not a goodbye or anything. Just a thank you for tuning in. Even if this is the first video, just tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Gonna keep making these videos for this year definitely. Next year I plan on it too. So definitely for the future still. But yeah, I will end the video here. Hopefully you guys did good with if for whatever reason you're still in fantasy, you did a good fantasy, won the title if you're in the chip game, if you're playing for the losers bracket, hopefully you got as high as you could have. Place wise, hope you did good betting. Hopefully, you guys did good with your picks, your teams are in the playoffs, you had good seeds, you got optimistic, hopefully all that good stuff happened. I am probably going to record my playoff bracket video early tomorrow morning, try to get it uploaded then. And then I am actually planning a collab with one of my buddies I met in school. We're just going to shoot the shit about the playoffs in the afternoon, so be on the lookout for that video. I will end the video here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you again for taking this ride with me for 18 weeks. Flew by. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good one. Take it easy, guys.